plus the December wind carved through my thin coat like a blade as I stood outside the Corinthian club, watching fur-wrapped women glide past me into warmth. My fingers had gone numb an hour ago. The polished brass doors reflected a girl I barely recognized, hollowed cheeks, borrowed heels that didn't fit, desperation painted over with drugstore mascara. I wasn't supposed to be visible. That was the whole point of catering staff at venues like this. We existed in the margins, refilling glasses before they emptied, clearing plates before anyone noticed the crumbs. Invisible machinery keeping the illusion of effortless luxury alive. But tonight I needed to be seen, just once, just by him. The email had been clear. Emergency hires for a private event, cash payment same night. I'd taken 3 buses to get here, left my phone on airplane mode so the hospital couldn't reach me with more bills I couldn't pay. My grandmother had 8 days of medication left, maybe 10 if I stretched the doses. The specialist had stopped returning my calls. I should have known better than to hope. A black car pulled up, something European and predatory, and the valet actually straightened his spine. The man who emerged moved like violence in a tailored suit, sharp enough to cut, controlled enough to terrify. Dark hair swept back, a face that belonged on Roman coins, and eyes that cataloged everything in a single sweep. Those eyes found me. Not a glance, a assessment, clinical and complete. Then he walked past, and I remembered how to breathe. The service entrance smelled like expensive food and cheap anxiety. 12 of us crammed into a hallway meant for 6, pulling on identical black uniforms, checking our reflections in phone screens. The woman next to me had done this before. Her hands were steady as she tied her apron. Mine shook. First time, she didn't look at me, just adjusted her collar. That obvious. You'll be fine. Keep your eyes down, smile with your mouth closed, never speak unless spoken to. They don't want to know we exist. She paused. And whatever you do, don't stare at him. Who? But she was already gone, swept into the current of bodies moving toward the main hall. The ballroom dripped crystal and consequence. Chandeliers cast everything in golden light, making the guests look like they'd been dipped in honey and wealth. I balanced my tray, champagne flutes arranged in a perfect grid, and became a shadow. It worked for exactly 40 minutes. I was circling back toward the kitchen when I felt it, the prickling awareness of being watched, not the casual glance of someone reaching for a drink, but focused attention, deliberate. I looked up without thinking. He stood across the room, that same man from the car, holding a conversation with 3 others but looking only at me. His gaze was a physical thing, heavy and assessing. One of the men beside him followed the look, frowned, started to turn. My phone vibrated in my pocket, once, twice, the special ring I'd set for the hospital. I couldn't answer, not here, not while I was supposed to be furniture. It kept ringing. The man still watching tilted his head slightly. An almost imperceptible gesture, but somehow I knew he'd heard it and was waiting to see what I'd do. I turned and walked quickly toward the service hall, tray still balanced, every instinct screaming at me to run. The phone died, then immediately started again. My grandmother's face flashed in my mind, the way she'd looked last week, confused about where she was, calling me by my mother's name. The hallway was empty. I set down the tray with shaking hands and answered. Yes. Ms. Volkov. The nurse's voice was tight with practiced sympathy. We need to discuss your grandmother's care plan, the current medication protocol. I switched to Russian without thinking, the language of my childhood, of whispered bedtime stories and bread fresh from her oven. How bad is it? The conversation lasted 90 seconds, long enough to learn that discussion meant payment immediately, and care plan meant we're considering discharge. Long enough for my entire world to narrow to a single point of math I couldn't solve. Long enough not to notice I wasn't alone anymore. Russian, His voice came from behind me, textured with an accent I couldn't place. Not quite Italian, not quite something else. Northern dialect, St. Petersburg. I spun around, phone still pressed to my ear, and found him standing 3 feet away. Up close he was even more devastating, the kind of handsome that felt weaponized. His cologne hit me, something dark and expensive with undertones of cedar and absolute confidence. The nurse was still talking, asking questions I couldn't answer. I have to go. I ended the call and tried to remember how to be invisible again. Failed completely. I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again. I'll get back to. Who needs medication? He spoke like someone used to having every question answered immediately. No one, it's handled, excuse me. I reached for the tray. His hand, massive, marked with a thin scar across the knuckles, settled on the counter beside it. Not touching me, not blocking me, just present. The agency sent you, emergency hire. It wasn't a question. What's your rate? I don't, that's not. How much do you need? Each word was precisely cut, perfectly weighted. For the medication. My mouth went dry. This was insane. People like him didn't talk to people like me, didn't notice when the furniture had personal emergencies, and they definitely didn't offer. Why? Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. You speak Russian. I need someone who speaks Russian. He checked his watch with the casual gesture of someone who owned time itself. I'm prepared to pay significantly more than whatever you're earning tonight, but I need an answer now. The phone buzzed again. Another call from the hospital. How much? My voice came out steady somehow. He named a figure that would cover 3 months of medication, maybe 4. What would I have to do? His smile was a careful thing, controlled and deliberate. Answer phones, translate documents, attend meetings. A pause. Pretend this conversation never happened if anyone asks. Every alarm bell I possessed was screaming. Men who looked like him, who moved like him, who offered money like it was oxygen. They didn't do it for translation services. They did it because they owned you after. But my grandmother had 8 days of medication left. I need it in cash, tonight. Of course. He produced a card from his inner pocket, matte black with silver lettering. No company name. Just a phone number and a single word, Dante. Not Mr. Anything, just Dante. Like God, I thought hysterically. Like he only needed one name. The service entrance, midnight. A car will be waiting. He picked up my abandoned tray with casual grace. Finish your shift, tell no one, and Ms. Volkov. I hadn't told him my name. Don't run, I'd hate to chase you. He walked away carrying my tray like he'd been serving champagne his entire life. And I stood in that hallway realizing I just made a deal with the devil. The only question was what he'd collect in return. The rest of the shift passed in a blur of mechanical movements. Pour, serve, smile, retreat. My body knew the choreography even as my mind spun in circles, examining the deal from every angle and finding only new ways it could destroy me. The woman from earlier found me in the coat room at 11:45. You talked to him, flat statement, no question. I don't want to know. She pulled on her jacket, wouldn't meet my eyes. My advice, take the money and forget you ever saw him. Men like Dante Cara don't do favors, they make investments. Cara, so he had a last name after all. What kind of investments? But she was already gone, and it was midnight, and a black Mercedes was idling at the service entrance exactly as promised. The driver didn't speak, didn't ask my name or where I was going, just opened the rear door and waited with the patience of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. The interior smelled like leather and that same cedar cologne. An envelope sat on the seat, cream-colored paper with a wax seal I didn't recognize. Old-world formal, the kind of thing people stopped doing in the previous century. I broke the seal. Cash exactly as promised. more money than I'd seen in one place in my entire life. And underneath, a single sheet of paper with an address, a time, 10 tomorrow morning, and one line written in precise block letters. Bring your passport, come alone, trust will be rewarded. The car started moving before I could change my mind, gliding through streets I didn't recognize toward a part of the city I'd only seen from bus windows. The buildings grew taller, sleeker, more expensive with every block. We stopped in front of a high-rise that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black glass. The driver finally spoke. 30th floor, he's expecting you. Now I thought. He wanted to make sure you received the advance safely. The driver's eyes found mine in the mirror, surprisingly kind for someone in his profession. And to tell you that transportation to the hospital has been arranged for the morning. The medication will be delivered by 8. My throat closed. How did he? Mr. Kara is thorough. The building had the kind of lobby where even the security guards wore tailored suits. One of them nodded as I approached, already pulling up something on his tablet before I said a word. Ms. Volkov, Mr. Kara is in the East Office. Elevator Bank 3, penthouse access is already programmed. I'd never been in an elevator that moved this fast or this smooth. The numbers climbed, 20, 25, 30, and my stomach did complicated things that had nothing to do with velocity. The doors opened directly into a space that couldn't decide if it was an office or an art gallery. Floor to ceiling, windows showcased the city like a conquered territory. Minimal furniture, maximum impact. And standing by those windows, silhouetted against the glittering dark, was Dante. He didn't turn around. You came. You paid me. I gave you an advance. Payment implies completion. Now he turned, and the city lights behind him made him look like something mythological. We haven't even discussed terms yet. Terms? I held the envelope like a shield. You said translation work. I did. He moved to a sideboard, poured something amber into 2 glasses, offered me one. When I didn't take it, he smiled that careful smile again. Wise, never accept drinks from men you don't trust. He set it down. Tell me about your grandmother. The question landed like a punch. What? How long has she been ill? What's the prognosis? Why isn't your family helping? That's not, you can't just. I can. He settled into a chair that probably cost more than my annual rent, gestured to the one opposite. I need to know what leverage points exist in your life before I bring you into mine. Your grandmother is clearly the primary one. Are there others? The honesty was somehow more terrifying than deception would have been. I sat carefully. She raised me. My parents died when I was 7. There's no one else. The words came out flat, factual, safer that way. She has vascular dementia, late stage. The medications slow the progression, but they're not covered by insurance, and the only facility that has availability is expensive, he nodded. And you're working 3 jobs that barely cover rent, let alone specialist care. How do you? I told you, I'm thorough. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and suddenly the polished veneer cracked just enough to show something raw underneath. I'm going to make you an offer, Katerina. You can refuse it. You can walk out that door right now with the money I've already given you, and we'll never see each other again. But if you stay, I'll take care of your grandmother. Full medical care, top specialists, the best facility in the city, for as long as she needs it. The room tilted. In exchange for what? 6 months. You work for me, live where I tell you to live, go where I tell you to go. You translate during meetings, accompany me to events, act as my assistant. A pause, weighted with meaning. And occasionally, when necessary, you pretend to be more than my assistant. There it was, the catch. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend. I want you to be convincing in whatever role the situation demands. Sometimes that's a translator, sometimes a date, sometimes, he stood, moved to the window again. Sometimes people need to believe I have something to lose, something human and vulnerable. Right now, they don't believe that. Because you don't. He looked back at me, and for just a second I saw something ancient in his eyes. Because I haven't, until it became strategically necessary. My grandmother's face, confused and frightened in that hospital bed, the stack of bills I'd stopped opening, the cold that never seemed to leave my bones no matter how many layers I wore. Why me? You speak Russian. You're clever enough to answer a phone call in a language you thought no one would understand, which means you're adaptable. You're desperate enough to consider this but smart enough to ask questions. And he turned fully now, giving me the weight of his complete attention. You're exactly the kind of beautiful that won't look out of place beside me but won't overshadow what I need people to focus on. It should have been an insult. Somehow it landed as the most honest assessment I'd ever received. 6 months, I repeated, and then what? Then your grandmother has care for life, you have enough money to finish whatever education you've abandoned, and we part ways professionally. He moved closer, each step deliberate. I don't hurt people who work for me, Katerina. I don't force them into anything they don't choose, but I also don't tolerate betrayal. He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. If you run, I'll find you. If you talk to the wrong people, there will be consequences. If you try to manipulate this situation beyond the terms we agree to tonight. His voice dropped to something that felt like silk over razors. Then the care stops. Immediately. That's honest, he finished. I'm telling you exactly what this is. A transaction. Your loyalty and discretion for your grandmother's life and your future. No romance, no delusions, no pretty lies. He pulled a folder from the desk, set it in my lap. Contract, read it. Take it to a lawyer if you want, I'll pay for that too. You have 24 hours to decide. I opened it with shaking hands. The terms were exactly as he'd stated, laid out in legal language I barely understood but could feel the weight of. 6 months exclusive employment, housing provided, wardrobe allowance, medical care for one dependent, non-disclosure agreement that would bankrupt me if broken. And at the bottom, a salary number that made the advance look like pocket change. Why so much? Because you'll earn it. He returned to his chair, picked up his untouched drink. The people I deal with are dangerous, Katerina. Not in the way you're imagining. No one's going to threaten you in dark alleys. But they're dangerous the way glaciers are dangerous. Slow, inevitable, crushing. And you want me to, what? Be the thing that makes you look less dangerous. I want you to be the reason I choose peace over war. His smile held no warmth, even if it's a fiction we're both maintaining. The lights of the city stretched out behind him. 1,000 lives I'd never touch, dreams I'd given up on years ago when bills became more real than possibilities. I need to see her first, my grandmother, before I agree. He nodded as if he'd expected this. The car will take you now. I've already called ahead. They're expecting you. Medication will be delivered in the morning as promised, regardless of your decision. And if I say no, then you say no. He stood, walked to the elevator, pressed the call button. I've made you an offer, not a prison. The choice is always yours. The doors opened. I stepped inside, contract clutched in my hands, my mind a chaos of calculation and dread. Katerina, he caught the door before it closed. Your grandmother is lucky to have someone who loves her this much. It was the kindest thing he'd said all night, and somehow that made it the most terrifying. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and surrender. My grandmother looked impossibly small against the white sheets, her hair thin and silver, her hands restless even in sleep. I'd taken the bus here hundreds of times, watched her fade degree by degree, memorized every new absence in her eyes. Tonight she looked peaceful. The nurse who met me at the desk looked relieved. Ms. Volkov, we weren't expecting you until morning. I needed to see her. Of course, she handed me a visitor badge, and Ms. Volkov about the medication. It's handled. Yes, we received a call, very generous benefactor. Her expression was professionally neutral, but I caught the flicker of something underneath. Curiosity, maybe concern. These arrangements, they're secure, long-term. They will be. I sat beside my grandmother's bed, took her hand. The skin was paper-thin, spotted with age and IV bruises. She stirred, opened her eyes, and for a heartbeat didn't recognize me. Then, Katia, my little Katia. I'm here, babushka. You look tired. Her Russian was softer than mine, worn smooth by years. You work too hard. I found a new job, a good one. What kind of job? What could I say? I've agreed to become a prop in a dangerous man's performance of humanity. I'm selling 6 months of my life so you can have medications we can't afford. Translation work for a businessman, it pays well. Her eyes, still sharp when they focused, studied my face. What kind of businessman needs a translator so urgently he pays well? The thorough kind. She laughed, a small sound that became a cough. When she recovered, she squeezed my hand. Your grandfather, he knew men like that, before the wall came down. Men who spoke in transaction and moved in shadows. A pause. They're not all evil, Katia, but they're all dangerous. I'll be careful. No, she pulled me closer, surprising strength in her grip. You'll be smart. Careful is passive, smart is survival. What's the difference? Careful means you avoid the tiger. Smart means you learn what the tiger hunts, what it fears, what it needs. Her eyes drifted closed again. And if you're very smart, you become something the tiger needs more than it needs to hunt. Rest, babushka. You'll take the job. I don't have a choice. Everyone has choices, we just don't always like the options. She was fatting, slipping back toward sleep. But Katia, if this man, this businessman, if he hurts you. He won't. How do you know? Because he'd been honest about what he was, what he wanted, what I'd pay. Because he'd laid out the terms like a surgeon, precise and cold and utterly clear. Because somehow that felt safer than all the pretty lies other men had told me. I don't, I admitted, but I know what happens if I say no. She nodded, already more asleep than awake. Then go dance with your tiger, little one. Just remember, even tigers can be tamed if you know what they're hungry for. I stayed until her breathing evened out, until the night nurse came to adjust her IV and raised an eyebrow at me still being there. The contract felt heavy in my bag, a physical manifestation of the choice I'd already made before I'd even understood I was making it. The car was waiting outside, the same driver, the same patient silence. Back to the tower, he asked. No, I pulled out my phone, looked at the address on the contract. Take me here. The apartment was in a building I'd walked past 100 times without ever imagining I'd live inside. Modern, secure, the kind of place where the lobby had fresh flowers changed daily, and the doorman actually knew your name. My name was already programmed into the system. The apartment itself was on the 14th floor, 2 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. Furniture that looked expensive but felt comfortable. A kitchen that had clearly been stocked by someone who'd done their research. The coffee was the cheap brand I bought. The tea was the Russian blend my grandmother preferred. A wardrobe had been installed in the main bedroom, already filled with clothes in my size. Professional attire, evening wear, casual options. Nothing overtly sexy, nothing cheap. Everything tailored to be appropriate, attractive, forgettable in its elegance. On the nightstand, a phone, new high-end with a single contact programmed in. Dante. I picked it up, felt the weight of expensive technology in my palm. The message notification was already waiting. Welcome home, rest tonight. Car comes at 9. The contract can wait until you've slept. D. Home. As if 6 months of pretending could make anywhere home. as if this beautiful cage was anything other than a transaction with better sheets than I was used to. I opened the contract anyway, read it through twice. The language was dense but clear. 6 months exclusive employment beginning immediately. Duties as assigned. Housing provided at the address where I currently stood. Wardrobe allowance, meal stipend, medical care for one dependent comprehensive, and guaranteed regardless of employment status continuation after 6 months. That last part made me read it 3 more times. The medical care didn't stop if I quit, didn't stop if I was fired, didn't stop at all once initiated. My grandmother was protected regardless of what happened to me. It should have made me feel better. Instead, it made me understand exactly how thoroughly he'd trapped me. He'd removed the one leverage point that would have let me walk away. Now I was staying because I wanted to, because the alternative was abandoning a situation that was better than anything I could create myself. Stockholm Syndrome as contract negotiation. I called the number. He answered on the first ring, Katerina. The medical care clause, it doesn't end. No. Why not? A pause, the sound of papers rustling, a door closing somewhere in his space. Because I don't use people's dying relatives as leverage. I pay for your work, I take care of your grandmother, and those two things aren't connected. Another pause. If you want to leave after 6 months, you leave. If I want to fire you, I fire you. But your grandmother's care is separate, non-negotiable. That's not how business works. It's how my business works. His voice carried something that might have been irritation. Sign the contract or don't, Katerina, but stop trying to find the trap. Sometimes the terms are exactly what they appear to be. You're a criminal. I didn't mean to say it out loud. He laughed, a sound without much humor. I prefer strategically flexible regarding legal constraints. But yes, in the conventional sense, I suppose I am. The sound of liquid being poured, glass on wood. Does that change your answer? It should have. Any sane person would have run. No, I said. It just means I know what I'm signing. Good, a click, a flame, he was lighting something. Then sign it, scan it, send it to the number in the folder. Sleep. Tomorrow we start teaching you how to survive in my world. And if I can't learn, then you'll fail elegantly, I'll find someone else, and your grandmother still gets her care. Another pull on whatever he was smoking. I told you, Katerina, I don't set people up to fail. There's no percentage in it. Why me? I asked again. Really, there have to be 100 women who speak Russian and need money. The silence stretched long enough that I thought he'd hung up. Then, because when you stood in that hallway tonight deciding whether to answer a call you weren't supposed to take, you chose the person who needed you over the job that could fire you. You chose love over fear. His voice dropped. That's rare in my world, rare enough to be valuable. I thought you didn't believe in love. I don't believe in romantic love, but I believe in the kind of love that picks up the phone even when it costs you everything. That kind of love is useful. He hung up before I could respond. I signed the contract at midnight, scanned it with the printer that had appeared in the second bedroom, sent it to the secure number he'd provided. The confirmation came back in seconds, a single word. Welcome. And then, because my grandmother's words were echoing in my head, because I was tired of being smart and careful and breaking myself into pieces to survive, I sent a reply. What are you hungry for? The response took longer this time. Long enough that I'd showered, changed into pajamas I'd found in one of the drawers, and was staring at the city lights through windows that didn't have bars on them for the first time in 3 years. When the message came, it was brief. Peace, and I think you might be able to help me find it. Sleep well, Katerina. Tomorrow changes everything. I did sleep, eventually. In sheets that smelled like cedar and consequence, in an apartment that was beautiful and borrowed, in a life that had shifted overnight from desperate to dangerous. And when I dreamed, it was of tigers and chains, and the moment before a choice becomes inevitable. The car arrived at 8:45, early enough to make a point. I was ready, dressed in one of the elegant, forgettable outfits from the wardrobe, hair pulled back, minimal makeup, professional armor. The driver, I still didn't know his name, handed me a tablet as soon as I settled into the seat. Mr. Kara asked that you review these before arrival. The screen showed a series of profiles. Names, photos, brief backgrounds. A Russian oligarch with stakes in natural gas. An Italian banker with ties to the Vatican. A German industrialist whose smile looked like it had been purchased separately from his face. 3 women who appeared to be wives or assistants or both. And at the bottom, a note in Dante's precise handwriting. Know them. They already know everything about you. The building we pulled up to wasn't the black glass tower from last night. This was older, more subtle, the kind of place that had existed for centuries and would exist for centuries more. Stone facade, discreet entrance, the smell of old money when the door opened. Dante waited in the lobby, looking every inch the respectable businessman in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my old apartment's annual rent. His gaze swept over me once, appraising. Acceptable, can you walk in those heels? I'd worn heels to weddings, funerals, and the occasional disastrous date. Yes. For 4 hours. If I have to. You'll have to, he turned, expecting me to follow. First meeting is in 20 minutes. Russian gas interests trying to route through Italian territory. They'll speak Italian when they want to exclude me, Russian when they want to exclude the Italians. Your job is to tell me everything they're saying without appearing to understand it yourself. How am I supposed to do that? Touch your right earring when you need to relay something. I'll create an opening to step away, you'll follow, you'll tell me. We entered an elevator lined with wood and mirrors. And Katerina, they will test you. They'll say crude things, personal things, things designed to see if you react. Don't. What kind of things? His reflection in the mirror met mine. Things about your body, things about what they assume I'm paying you for, things about what they'd like to do if I weren't in the room. Heat flooded my face, and I'm supposed to just pretend you don't understand, smile, let them think you're decorative and deaf. The elevator stopped. It's armor, Katerina. Their words can't hurt you if they don't know you comprehend them. The meeting room was all dark wood and darker intentions. The Russian sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 men who looked like they'd been carved from concrete. The Italian banker occupied the opposite end, his assistant a sharp-eyed woman who tracked every movement like she was keeping score. And Dante, settling into the chair that somehow became the seat of power regardless of its position, his hand casual on the small of my back as he guided me to the seat beside him. That touch, warm through the fabric of my jacket, possessive in a way that made my breath catch. The Russian spoke first in English. Dante, you didn't mention you'd be bringing entertainment. Ms. Volkov is my assistant. Dante's tone could have cut glass. And she's here because we're discussing routes through multiple jurisdictions. I prefer to have all the relevant parties present. Of course, the Russian's smile was all teeth. How efficient. They dove into business, percentages, timelines, regulatory considerations. I took notes on the tablet Dante had given me, playing my role perfectly. Ornamental, efficient, invisible. Then the Russian switched to his native language, addressing his men with the casual confidence of someone who assumed exclusivity. What do you think? Does he actually fuck her, or is she just expensive window dressing? The younger man laughed. With those legs, he'd be stupid not to. I heard Kara doesn't keep women. Too much liability. Everyone keeps women, some just hide it better. My hand stayed steady on the tablet. My expression remained pleasantly neutral, but I reached up, touched my right earring with what I hoped looked like an absent gesture. Dante didn't even pause in his response to something the Italian banker had said, just shifted slightly, then stood. "Excuse me, I need to make a call." His hand found the small of my back again. "Katerina, I'll need those figures we discussed." I followed him out, down a corridor lined with paintings that probably cost more than my grandmother's entire medical care, into an empty office that smelled like furniture polish and power. "Well," he closed the door, leaned against it. "They're speculating about our relationship, whether it's sexual." One of them commented on my legs. I kept my voice flat, professional. "Nothing useful." "Everything is useful." He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "They're comfortable enough to be crude, which means they don't see you as a threat." "Good." He looked up. "Did it bother you?" "You said it wouldn't matter if it did." "I said their words can't hurt you if they don't know you understand them. I didn't say I don't care if it bothers you." His gaze held steady. "Did it?" The honesty caught me off guard. "Yes." "Good, that means you're still human. Hold on to that." He pocketed his phone. "When we go back in, I'm going to make a joke, something that implies intimacy without confirming it. They'll be watching your reaction. Smile, touch my arm, make it look like we have a secret." "What kind of secret?" "The kind that makes you valuable as a person, not just a translator." He straightened, adjusted his cuffs. "Ready?" "No." "Perfect. Neither am I. That's what makes it convincing." We returned to find the meeting had shifted into Italian. The Russian looked irritated, the banker smug. Dante slid back into his seat and I followed, hyper-aware of every eye on us. "My apologies," Dante said smoothly. "Technical difficulties. Where were we?" "Discussing timeline." The banker's assistant spoke for the first time, her voice cool and precise. "Mr. Volkov was just explaining why the spring window is preferable to summer." I watched Dante's face, saw the micro-expression that said he'd caught it. The deliberate mistake in my name, the test. "Ms. Volkov," he corrected gently. "And I agree with her assessment. Spring gives us more flexibility." The Russian's eyes narrowed. "Her assessment." "Katerina has a degree in international logistics. One of many reasons I value her input." Dante's hand found mine on the table, a casual gesture that sent electricity straight through me. "Among others." I smiled, squeezed his hand, and tried not to think about how natural it felt, how dangerous that was. The meeting continued for another 90 minutes. Languages shifted and blended, English, Italian, Russian, back to English. I tracked it all, feeding Dante information through the earring signals, watching him pivot and adapt. He was extraordinary at this, I realized. Reading the room, knowing exactly when to push and when to yield, orchestrating the entire dance while making everyone else believe they were leading. By the end, they'd agreed to preliminary terms. Handshakes all around, promises of future meetings, the careful choreography of powerful men pretending to be colleagues instead of competitors. The Russian lingered as the others filed out. "Impressive, Dante. The girl is well trained." Dante's expression didn't change, but I felt his hand tighten fractionally on my back. "Ms. Volkov is well educated. There's a difference." "Of course." The Russian switched to his native language again, eyes on me. "Such a shame to waste that education on an assistant position." I kept my expression blank, waited for the earring signal. It didn't come. Instead, Dante replied in flawless Russian. "What Ms. Volkov chooses to do with her education is her business. What I choose to pay her for it is mine." The Russian's face went carefully neutral. "You speak Russian." "Did I not mention that?" Dante's smile was all edges. "Must have slipped my mind, along with several other qualifications that seemed premature to discuss." They stared at each other for a long moment, two predators reassessing the hierarchy. Then the Russian laughed, a sound like gravel in a disposal. "You're more interesting than I thought, Kara." "I'm exactly as interesting as I need to be." Dante guided me toward the door. "We'll be in touch about the spring timeline." We didn't speak until we were back in the car, the driver pulling smoothly into traffic. Then Dante handed me a bottle of water, waited while I drank half of it in one go. "You speak Russian," I said finally. "Fluently, also Italian, German, French, and enough Mandarin to get myself in trouble." He loosened his tie, the first crack in his perfect presentation all day. "I don't advertise it. People are more honest when they think you don't understand them." "So you didn't need a translator." I needed someone who would react appropriately when hearing things I already knew. Someone who wouldn't reveal that I understood every crude comment about their legs. His gaze found mine. Someone who would play the role so convincingly that men like Volkov would believe it. "You did that perfectly." "So what am I really? A translator or a prop?" "You're both, and Katerina." He turned fully toward me, and in the filtered light of the car he looked almost human, almost reachable. "You're also the person I'm trusting not to reveal that I understood every word they said. That information is valuable. In the wrong hands it could get me killed." The weight of that trust settled over me like snow, cold and suffocating and impossible to shake off. "Why tell me at all then?" "Because you're going to hear things. In Russian, Italian, German, and I need you to understand that when I don't react, it's not because I'm oblivious. It's because I'm choosing my battles." He pulled out his phone, checked something. "We have 2 hours before the next meeting. Your grandmother's medication was delivered this morning. The hospice I've arranged has availability starting Monday. I've sent you the details." The shift was so casual I almost missed it. From business to my personal life, as if they were equally his to manage. "You can't just." "I can, I did. If you don't like the facility, tell me and I'll find another one. But Katerina," he met my eyes again, "this is what I do. I solve problems through logistics and money. It's not romantic, it's not even particularly kind. It's just efficient. It's control." "Yes," no hesitation. "It is. And you signed a contract agreeing to let me have it for 6 months in exchange for exactly this kind of efficiency." He leaned back. "You can be angry about it, but don't pretend you didn't know what you were agreeing to." He was right. I hated that he was right. The driver pulled up to a restaurant that probably didn't even have prices on the menu. Dante checked his watch. "Lunch meeting. Swiss investors interested in Mediterranean shipping routes. They'll speak German and English. You're here as my date, not my assistant. Laugh at appropriate moments. Let me order for you. Touch my hand when you want me to know you're uncomfortable." Why would I be uncomfortable? His smile was grim. "Because one of them has a reputation for having very inappropriate hands, and if he touches you without permission, I'm going to break 3 of his fingers." That seems proportionate. He opened the car door himself this time, offered me his hand. "Welcome to my world, Katerina. It's elegant and violent and honest in all the worst ways." I took his hand and stepped out into the sunlight, and wondered what my grandmother would say if she could see me now. Probably something about tigers and hunger, and the moment survival becomes something else entirely. The Swiss investors were exactly as dangerous as Dante had promised. 3 men in their 50s, expensive watches and predatory smiles, the kind who'd built empires by understanding exactly where to apply pressure. They spoke German among themselves with the ease of people who'd been conducting business together for decades. Dante introduced me as his companion, not his assistant. The shift in dynamic was immediate and uncomfortable. These men looked at me differently, less like furniture, more like dessert. The one Dante had warned me about, Klaus, sat to my right. His hand found my knee before the appetizers arrived. I touched Dante's hand across the table, a gentle brush of fingers that could have been affection or signal, depending on interpretation. His eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. Then he smiled, easy and warm, and stood. "Klaus, a moment." He gestured toward the restaurant's terrace. "There's a detail about the container specifications I want to clarify privately." Klaus removed his hand from my knee, looked annoyed. "Can it wait?" It could, but then we'd be negotiating rates based on incorrect capacity metrics, and I'd hate to waste everyone's time. Dante's tone was pleasant, professional, utterly inflexible. They went outside. Through the windows, I watched Dante speak quietly, watched Klaus's expression shift from irritation to understanding to something that might have been fear. When they returned, Klaus didn't look at me for the rest of the meal. The business discussion was technical, shipping routes, container regulations, port agreements. The kind of conversation that would have put me to sleep if I hadn't been hyper-aware of the undercurrents. These men weren't just discussing shipping. They were discussing smuggling routes dressed up in legitimate language. Dante navigated it perfectly, agreeing to terms that sounded reasonable but left him significant flexibility. When they switched to German to discuss numbers they clearly didn't want him to understand, I nearly laughed. They were lowballing him by almost 40%. I leaned in, pressed my lips close to his ear like I was whispering something intimate. They're offering you 60 when the market rate is 95. They think you don't know. His hand found the small of my back, warm and steady. To anyone watching, we looked like lovers sharing a private moment. He turned his head, lips brushing my temple, and murmured, "Let them think I'm accepting. I'll counter tomorrow with market rate plus 20, and they'll think they got a deal at market plus 5. That's business." He kissed my forehead, a gesture so natural I almost forgot it wasn't real. "Thank you." The meal ended with handshakes and promises. As we left, Klaus actually apologized, stilted and clearly forced, but genuine enough that I realized whatever Dante had said on that terrace had been extremely effective. "What did you tell him?" I asked when we were back in the car. "That if he touched you again, I'd use his shipping routes to transport something that would get him 15 years in a Swiss prison." Dante loosened his tie, exhausted in a way I hadn't seen before. "And then I'd send evidence to his wife." "Do you actually have evidence of?" "I have evidence of everything, Katerina. That's why people are careful around me." He closed his eyes, leaned his head back. "2 more meetings today, then you're done until Monday." "What happens Monday?" "We fly to Milan. 3 days of meetings with people who make Klaus look like a gentleman. You'll need evening wear, something elegant. I've arranged for a stylist tomorrow." "I don't need." "Yes, you do. Because the women there will take one look at you and catalog every thread you're wearing, every piece of jewelry, every signal of whether you're valuable or decoration." His eyes opened, found mine. "I need you to look like both, valuable enough to respect, beautiful enough to underestimate." That's a very narrow line. "Welcome to the performance." He smiled, tired but genuine. "You did well today, better than I expected for a first day." The compliment shouldn't have mattered. It did. "When Klaus touched me, I handled it." "You threatened him with prison and his marriage." "Yes," no apology in his voice. "Would you have preferred I let him continue?" "I would have preferred to handle it myself." He studied me for a long moment. "How?" "I don't know, but I'm not helpless." "I never said you were. I said you were mine to protect for the next 6 months." He shifted to face me fully. "That was the deal, Katerina. I provide security, resources, and logistics. You provide translation, presence, and discretion. Neither of us is helpless, but we both have roles. And if I don't like my role, then you renegotiate. But you do it in private in clear terms with specific requests, not passive-aggressive questions in a car after a successful day." His tone was matter-of-fact, not unkind. "I'm not a mind reader. If you have boundaries I haven't anticipated, tell me. I'll respect them if I can, negotiate if I can't, and release you from the contract if they're non-negotiable." The honesty was still jarring. I'd expected demands, manipulation, the slow erosion of boundaries until I didn't know where I ended and his requirements began. Instead, he was offering clarity, terms, a map of the terrain. "No one touches me without my permission," I said. Not investors, not business partners, not anyone in your world. I don't care how important they are. Agreed. If someone does, I handle it first. If I can't, then you can intervene. He considered this. What if your handling it creates diplomatic complications? Then I'll be diplomatic about it, but I won't be silent. A smile ghost across his face. Acceptable, what else? When we're in private, when it's just us, you don't touch me. No casual affection, no pretending the performance extends past the audience. The smile faded. That's going to be difficult to maintain consistently. The boundaries between performance and reality get blurry when you're living it daily. Then we'll be very clear about the lines. All right. He extended his hand, formal and strange in the enclosed space of the car. Agreed. Your body, your boundaries, I'll respect them. I shook his hand, felt the strength in his grip, the calluses that said he wasn't just a man who managed violence from a distance. You know how to fight, I said. I know how to survive. He released my hand. There's a difference. The car pulled up to my building. My temporary building, I reminded myself. Everything here was temporary. The apartment, the clothes, the role I was playing. In 6 months I'd walk away, and all of this would become a story I'd tell myself when I couldn't sleep. If I survived it. Dante, I paused with my hand on the door. Why did you really need someone who speaks Russian? You said you speak it fluently. I needed someone who would react to it naturally. Someone whose face would show what they were hearing without revealing that I understood it too. He met my eyes. I needed someone honest in a world where everyone's wearing a mask, even if that honesty is performed. That's paradoxical, I know. He pulled out his phone, already moving to the next thing. Rest this weekend. Monday we start the real work. I climbed out of the car, watched it pull away, and stood in the sunlight realizing I had no idea what we'd been doing today if it wasn't the real work. The stylist arrived Saturday morning with racks of clothing and an opinion about everything. She was French, impossibly chic, and utterly ruthless about what worked and what didn't. No black, she declared, pulling dresses from garment bags like a magician revealing tricks. Everyone wears black. You wear emerald, sapphire, deep wine. Colors that make men remember you wore something beautiful without remembering exactly what. She dressed me like a doll, assessing each outfit with the critical eye of someone who understood exactly what signals clothes sent. Too much skin, trying too hard. Too little, afraid of attention. Too trendy, desperate. Too classic, boring. You want to look like you walked out of his bedroom wearing last night's elegance, she explained, adjusting the drape of a silk dress. Not like you tried on 50 options this morning. That's very specific. That's Milan. She stepped back, studied me. Perfect, you'll wear this Monday night, now jewelry. The pieces she'd brought weren't flashy. No massive diamonds, no obvious price tags. Instead, a pair of pearl earrings that caught light perfectly. A thin gold bracelet with a single small emerald. A necklace so delicate it looked like spun moonlight. Always one statement piece, she instructed. More than one and you look like you're wearing your entire jewelry box. None and you look like you forgot to dress. This is exhausting. This is armor. She packed away the rejected options efficiently. Mr. Kara is paying me extremely well to make sure you're bulletproof in social combat. These women in Milan, they will look for any weakness. Wrong shoes, wrong hemline, wrong earrings. They'll know you're temporary and treat you accordingly. I am temporary. She paused, met my eyes in the mirror. Then act like you're not. That's the entire game. After she left, I stood in the apartment surrounded by elegant armor and felt the full weight of what I'd agreed to. This wasn't just translation work or occasional arm candy. This was a full identity replacement. Katerina, the struggling caretaker, was being systematically erased, replaced by Katerina, the sophisticated companion, the woman who belonged beside Dante Kara. The woman who didn't exist. My phone buzzed. A message from the hospital. My grandmother had been moved to the new facility. The transition had gone smoothly. She was resting comfortably. Visiting hours were 2 to 8 daily. I took 3 buses to get there, unwilling to use Dante's driver for something personal. The facility was in a part of the city I'd never been to, where buildings had gardens and the air smelled like money and care instead of antiseptic and resignation. The receptionist knew my name. The nurse who greeted me knew my grandmother's complete medical history. The room they'd given her had windows that overlooked actual trees, not parking lots. Babushka was awake, looking more alert than I'd seen her in months. "Katia," she smiled, reached for me. This is expensive." "I told you, new job." "What kind of job pays for this?" She gestured at the room, the equipment, the flowers someone had already delivered. "Who is this businessman?" I sat beside her bed, took her hand. "Someone dangerous." "How dangerous?" "The kind where people speak carefully and avoid making him angry." She nodded slowly. "Your grandfather knew men like that, in Moscow before we left, men who moved money and made problems disappear." Her fingers tightened on mine. "They were generous to friends and terrible to enemies. Which are you?" "I don't know yet." "Then be careful which you become." She studied my face with those still sharp eyes. "You look different, not just the clothes, your face." "What about it?" "You look like you're wearing someone else's expression, like you're practicing being someone you're not." She touched my cheek. "Don't lose yourself in the practicing, Katia. Don't become the performance." 6 months, I said. "That's all, then it's over." 6 months is long enough to forget who you were before. She settled back into her pillows, already tiring. But maybe that's not bad. Maybe the girl who breaks herself working 3 jobs to afford my medications deserves to be forgotten. "Babushka." "I'm proud of you," she interrupted. "And I'm frightened for you, can both be true." "Yes," I kissed her forehead. "Rest, I'll come back tomorrow." "Bring him." "What?" "This dangerous businessman who pays for expensive facilities and sends flowers. Bring him. I want to see what you've sold yourself for." "It's not like that." Her smile was knowing and sad. "It's always like that, Katia. The question is whether the price is worth paying." I stayed until she slept, then took the 3 buses back to the borrowed apartment, and spent the evening staring at racks of clothes that cost more than my education and wondering if my grandmother was right. Was I practicing being someone else, or was I becoming her? And which option was more dangerous? Monday morning arrived with cold rain and colder dread. The car picked me up at 5, early enough to reach the private airfield before sunrise, late enough that I'd spent the entire night not sleeping. Dante was already on the plane, working on a laptop, coffee in hand. He looked up when I boarded, did that assessing sweep again. "Good, you listened to Sophie." "The stylist." "The sorceress." He closed the laptop. "Sit. We have 4 hours before we land. I need to brief you on what we're walking into." The plane was obscenely comfortable, leather seats that reclined fully, a cabin that felt more like a living room than transportation. I settled across from him, accepted coffee from an attendant who appeared and vanished like smoke. "Milan," Dante began, pulling up a presentation on a tablet, "is where old money meets old crime and pretends they're having a business meeting. The families we're meeting with have been operating for 3 generations. They're sophisticated, connected, and utterly ruthless about maintaining their territory." He showed me photos. Older men in expensive suits, younger men with hungry eyes, women who looked like they could kill you with a wine glass and a smile. "Why are we meeting them?" "Because they control the Mediterranean ports I need for my shipping routes. And because they're in a succession crisis. The old man is dying, his sons are fighting over the territory, and I'm positioning myself as the neutral party who can help them avoid war." By doing what? By providing infrastructure they all need, shipping routes that serve all three suns equally, financial frameworks that make cooperation more profitable than conflict. He switched to a new slide, this one showing organizational charts, and by appearing stable enough, human enough, that they believe I'm not a threat. That's where I come in. That's where you come in. You're my stability, my humanity, the reason I'd choose peace over profit. He set down the tablet. These people, they understand loyalty to family. They respect it. So you're not just my translator or my date. You're my person. The one thing I'd protect over everything else. But I'm not. They don't know that. His gaze was steady. And for the next 72 hours, even we're going to pretend you are. Because Katerina, these people are very good at finding cracks in performances. If there's any daylight between us, any hesitation or inconsistency, they'll exploit it. What does that mean practically? It means we share a suite, separate bedrooms but connected space. It means I touch you frequently in public, nothing inappropriate but enough to establish intimacy. It means you look at me like I'm the center of your world, and I look at you like you're the reason I'd burn it down. He leaned forward. It means we sell this completely. No breaks, no dropping the mask, not even in private moments when you think no one's watching. My mouth went dry. That's necessary. He pulled a small box from his pocket, opened it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single small diamond on a platinum band. You'll wear this. Not an engagement ring, nothing that formal, but a promise ring. Something that says we're serious without claiming marriage. Dante. I know it's manipulation, it's theater. It's exactly the kind of thing you drew a boundary about. He held my gaze. But this is Milan, and these are people who will test every weakness. I need you to trust me on this. 3 days. Then the ring comes off, the performance ends, and we go back to the clear boundaries you established. I stared at the ring, at him, at the clouds outside the window. What did you tell them about me? That you're brilliant, loyal, and the one person I've let close enough to matter. That you speak 3 languages and understand logistics better than most of my executives. That you're studying international law and that I'm funding your education. He paused. And that anyone who disrespects you disrespects me. Is any of that true? The last part is. He picked up the ring, held it out. The rest is true enough. You are brilliant, you picked up the performance in 1 day. You are loyal, you're here instead of running. And you could study international law if you wanted. I'd pay for it. After the 6 months. After the 6 months, or during if you want to start now. He was still holding out the ring. Katerina, I need an answer. Are you in for this completely, or do I cancel the meetings and find another approach? You'd cancel. I'd reschedule, find someone else, restructure the deal. His expression was unreadable. I won't force you into something you're not comfortable with, but I need to know now. The plane hummed around us, expensive and isolated. Below, the Atlantic was a gray expanse of cold water and poor decisions. If I wear this ring, I said slowly, if I play this role completely, what happens when it's over? How do I take off a performance I've been living in for 3 days straight? The same way I do, carefully, with help if you need it. He set the ring on the table between us. I'm not asking you to lose yourself, Katerina. I'm asking you to be an actress for 72 hours. After that, we remember it was a performance. And if we forget, then we remind each other. He stood, poured more coffee, gave me space to think. Take 5 minutes, decide. If the answer is no, we'll turn this plane around and go home. I picked up the ring. It was lighter than I expected, warmer from being in his pocket. The diamond caught the cabin light, throwing tiny rainbows across my palm. 3 days, 72 hours, then back to clear boundaries and professional distance. I slid the ring onto my left hand. It fit perfectly. How did you know my size? I'm thorough. He returned to his seat and something in his expression eased. Relief maybe, thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen me try to act like I'm in love with you." His smile was unexpected and genuine. "I've been watching you act for days now. You're better at it than you think. Or maybe I'm not acting." The words came out before I could stop them. We both froze. Then I laughed, forced and brittle. "See, I can do theater." He didn't laugh, just studied me with those dark eyes that saw too much. "Katerina, whatever this becomes, whatever lines blur or boundaries shift, we both know what this is. A transaction, a performance, a temporary arrangement that benefits us both." "I know." "Do you?" He leaned forward. "Because the danger isn't that you'll fall for me. The danger is that we'll both forget we're pretending, and when the 6 months end, we won't know how to remember." "That won't happen." "It might." He reached across the space between us, touched the ring on my finger. "So we're going to be very careful. We're going to remember that this," he lifted my hand, the ring catching light, "is a prop. The touches are choreography. The looks are performance. And when we're alone, really alone, we take off the masks and remember who we actually are." "Who are you?" I asked. "Really, not the dangerous businessman or the sophisticated negotiator. Who is Dante Cara when no one's watching?" He released my hand, leaned back. "Someone who learned early that survival means never letting anyone know who you really are." A pause. "And someone who envies people like you, who still have something worth protecting." "My grandmother." "Your humanity." He picked up his laptop again, done with vulnerability. "Rest. We land in 3 hours, and the performance starts the moment we clear customs." I reclined my seat, closed my eyes, and felt the weight of the ring on my finger. 3 days. Just 3 days of pretending. I could do that. I had to. Because the alternative, admitting that my grandmother was right, that I was already becoming someone else, that the performance was bleeding into reality, was too dangerous to consider. Milan greeted us with slate-gray skis, an air that smelled like rain and antiquity. The car waiting for us was armored, discreet, and driven by someone who clearly knew how to lose a tail. Dante's hand found the small of my back as we walked through the airport, a touch that felt practiced and permanent. His other hand carried my bag along with his own, a small gesture that would have been chivalrous if it wasn't calculated. Everything was calculated now. "Smile," he murmured near my ear, "like you're happy to be here with me." I smiled, felt his hand tighten fractionally, approval or direction, I couldn't tell which. The hotel was old-world elegant, marble and mirrors, the kind of place where monarchs had stayed and scandals had been orchestrated. Our suite occupied an entire floor, with views of the Duomo and enough space to house a small family. 2 bedrooms, as promised, connected by a living area that was larger than my real apartment. Dante set down our bags, walked to the window, checked his phone. "We have 4 hours before the dinner. The family is sending a car at 8. Until then, you're free to rest, explore whatever you need." Just like that. Just like that. He loosened his tie, suddenly looking exhausted. "This is the last privacy we'll have for 3 days. Use it." I should have gone to my room. Instead, I stayed, watching him shed the dangerous businessman exterior layer by layer. Jacket on the chair, tie on the table, cufflinks dropped into a small dish with the precise habit of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "You can actually relax around me," I said. "No, I can't." He turned, met my eyes. "That's the problem, Katerina. Around you I have to remember to perform the performance. Around everyone else I just perform." A tired smile. "You're more work, not less." Should I be offended? You should be aware. He moved to the bar, poured something amber, offered me one. When I shook my head, he drank both. "These people tonight, they're going to push boundaries, test what we are, how real it is. They'll flirt with you, insult me within your hearing, try to make you uncomfortable or angry to see if I react. What do you want me to do?" "Stay close. If someone says something that crosses a line, look at me. I'll handle it. But Katerina, he set down the glass. Don't defend me, that's crucial. If you defend me, it breaks the dynamic. You have to trust that I can handle myself. What if they're cruel? Let them be. Cruelty reveals weakness. He checked his watch. 4 hours, sleep if you can. I'll wake you at 7 to dress. I went to my room, closed the door, and stood in the opulent silence trying to remember who I'd been a week ago. The girl who took 3 buses to visit her grandmother. The girl who counted coins for coffee. The girl who'd never worn a ring this expensive or stood in a hotel this beautiful. She felt very far away. I didn't sleep. Instead, I showered, did my hair and makeup with the expensive products Sophie had provided, and slipped into the emerald dress that made me look like I belonged in this world. At 7, Dante knocked, ready. I opened the door and watched his expression shift. Not dramatically, he was too controlled for that, but something in his eyes changed, warmed before he shuttered it away. Perfect, he said, turn around. I felt him approach from behind. His fingers were warm against my neck as he fastened a necklace, the delicate gold one Sophie had chosen, but with a pendant I hadn't seen before. A small emerald that matched the dress exactly. Where did? I had it made yesterday. Couldn't have you wearing something that didn't complement the dress. His hands lingered on my shoulders. Katerina, tonight will be difficult. These people, they're not like Klaus or the Russians. They're family, which means they fight dirty and expect loyalty that supersedes everything else. I understand. Do you? He turned me to face him, hands still on my shoulders. Because if anything happens tonight, if anyone threatens you or makes you uncomfortable or pushes too hard, I need you to promise me something. What? That you won't try to handle it yourself, that you'll let me be the monster so you don't have to become one. His grip tightened slightly. I can afford to be brutal. You can't. Not and keep who you are. You think I'm fragile. I think you're decent, and decency is dangerous in rooms like we're about to enter. He released me, stepped back, and the professional mask slid perfectly into place. Let's go remind them why they should fear me. The restaurant was exclusive enough not to have a sign. Just an unmarked door, a discreet guard, and a sense that fortunes changed hands inside these walls regularly. The family waited in a private room, the 3 sons and their father, who looked like death had already claimed him and was just waiting for the paperwork. The old man sat at the head of the table, oxygen tank beside him, eyes still sharp despite the body's failure. Dante greeted him in flawless Italian, respectful but not subservient. Then he introduced me, his hand warm on the small of my back. My companion, Katerina Volkov. The old man studied me with the intensity of someone cataloging value. Russian. Yes, sir. Kara never brings companions to business dinners. His English was heavily accented but clear. You must be special. Before I could respond, Dante smiled. She is very. We sat, Dante beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. The sons arranged themselves strategically. Luca, the eldest, across from Dante. Marco, the middle son, beside his father. And Alessandro, the youngest, beside me. Alessandro smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. So beautiful. How did a Russian find her way to Dante Kara's side? Luck, I said simply. Or calculation. Luca's voice was sharp. Beautiful women don't accidentally end up beside powerful men. Dante's hand found my thigh under the table, a warning or comfort, I couldn't tell. Katerina is brilliant, loyal, and exactly where she chooses to be. If that threatens you, Luca, perhaps examine why. The temperature in the room dropped. The old man coughed, a wet sound that spoke of time running out. Enough, we're here for business. He gestured to Dante. You have a proposal. Dante launched into his pitch. Infrastructure, shipping routes, financial frameworks that would benefit all 3 sons equally without favoring anyone. He was magnificent, painting a vision of cooperation that somehow made competition look childish. But I watched the sons' faces. Luca was skeptical, Marco intrigued, Alessandro was watching me. Not Dante's presentation, not his father's reaction, me. His hand brushed my arm, casual and deliberate. You understand what he's proposing? Yes. And you approve? I looked at Dante, who was still deep in presentation mode, then back to Alessandro. I approve of solutions that prevent unnecessary violence. Spoken like someone who's never had to fight for what's hers, Alessandro leaned closer. In our world, violence is necessary, expected, respected. In my world, I said quietly, violence is what people resort to when they've run out of better options. He laughed, surprised. I like you. Dante, where did you find this one? Working 3 jobs to afford her grandmother's medications. Dante didn't miss a beat in his presentation, but his hand tightened on my leg. She survived more than you can imagine with grace and intelligence. Don't insult her by assuming softness means weakness. The old man made a sound that might have been approval. You defend her. I do. Dante finally looked at me, and the performance in his eyes was so perfect I almost believed it. Always. Even if it costs you business. Especially then. The dinner continued. Food I barely tasted, wine I sipped carefully, conversation that danced between Italian and English depending on who wanted to exclude whom. Dante translated nothing, staying in character as someone who understood only enough Italian to navigate menus. But I saw him tracking every word, every nuance, every shift in power around the table. At dessert, Marco leaned forward. Your proposal is elegant, Cara, but it requires trust. Why should we trust you? Because I've never broken a deal, because I have more to lose than you do. Dante's hand found mine on the table, fingers threading through. And because I'm offering you peace while you're fighting over scraps of your father's legacy. The old man slammed his hand on the table, startling everyone. Then he laughed, raspy and genuine. He's not wrong, you 3 fighting like dogs over a bone that's not even dead yet. He pointed at Dante. I like your proposal. We'll discuss terms tomorrow. Now leave, all of you. I'm tired. We stood. Dante helped me with my chair, kept his hand on my back as we navigated out. In the car, finally alone, I realized I was shaking. You did perfectly, Dante said quietly. Alessandro was testing me. They all were, you passed. He loosened his tie. The hard part comes tomorrow. Negotiations with all 3 sons present, no father to referee. It's going to get ugly. How ugly? The kind where they'll use you as a weapon if they can. Try to make me choose between the deal and your dignity. His eyes met mine in the darkness of the car. I'm going to choose you. Every time. I need you to trust that. Even if it costs you everything. Especially then, because that's the only way they'll believe you matter, the only way this works. He reached over, touched the necklace he'd given me. This is real, Katerina. The care, the protection, not the romance but the responsibility, don't doubt that. I wanted to believe him. Maybe I already did. That was the most dangerous part of all. The next morning brought messages, flowers, and a security briefing I didn't understand. Dante spent 2 hours on phone calls in rapid Italian while I tried to eat breakfast and remember how to breathe normally. When he finally emerged from his room, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than a car, his expression was grim. Change of plans. The brothers want to meet separately before the group negotiation. Each one wants private time to feel me out. He checked his watch. Luca at 10, Marco at noon, Alessandro at 2. The group session is at 4. Where do I fit in this? You're with me for all of it. They'll try to exclude you, I won't let them. Your presence is part of the message. He poured coffee, drank it black. Luca will try to intimidate you. Marco will try to charm you. Alessandro will try to seduce you. None of it is real, all of it is strategy. What should I do? Be yourself, smart, observant, unimpressed by their performances. He met my eyes. And Katerina, if any of them offers you something directly, money, protection, information, tell me immediately. That's not business. That's them trying to turn you. Turn me against you. Turn you into an asset they control instead of one I trust. He set down his cup. It's the oldest play in the book. Seduce or buy the person closest to your opponent, gain leverage, win the war. I wouldn't. I know, but they don't know that yet, so they'll try. He moved closer and I saw the exhaustion in his eyes. This is the ugliest part of what I do, Katerina. Not the violence or the illegal shipping routes. The constant calculation of who's trying to manipulate whom and whether you're going to catch it before it matters. How do you live like this? Very carefully and with people I can trust. His hand found my cheek, a gentle touch that felt more real than anything we'd performed. I'm trusting you. Don't make me regret it. Luca met us in a gallery, modern art, expensive and incomprehensible. He was alone, which somehow made him more intimidating than when his brothers were present. Kara, Ms. Volkov. He nodded to me, then focused entirely on Dante. Let's walk. We walked through exhibitions of violence rendered in paint and sculpture. Luca spoke about art, about family, about legacy. And with every word, he was really talking about territory and power and who would inherit the kingdom. My father is dying, he said finally, stopping in front of a particularly brutal piece. When he's gone, the family looks to me. First son, first responsibility. Or first target, Dante observed. Luca smiled sharp. You understand, good. Marco is ambitious but stupid. Alessandro is clever but reckless. I'm the only one capable of holding this together. So why do you need me? Because holding it together means managing the external threats while I consolidate internally. Your shipping routes give me leverage with the Turks, the Russians, everyone who thinks my father's death means opportunity. He turned, looked at me directly for the first time. But I need to know you're not a weakness I'm importing. Katerina isn't a weakness, Dante said quietly. Everyone who matters to you is a weakness. That's basic strategy. Luca stepped closer to me, and I forced myself not to retreat. So tell me, Ms. Volkov, what happens when one of my rivals decides to use you as leverage against Kara, when they threaten you to get to him? Then I become his problem to solve, I said evenly, not yours. Unless solving it requires resources I can't spare, unless it creates complications I can't afford. He circled me slowly. You're very beautiful, very smart, very much a liability dressed as an asset. Dante moved between us, a smooth interception that looked casual but blocked Luca's advance completely. If you're trying to intimidate her, it's not working. If you're trying to intimidate me, you'll need a better strategy. His voice was pleasant, dangerous. Katerina is mine to protect. That protection doesn't cost you anything unless you're the threat. Everyone is the threat, Kara. You should know that by now. I do, which is why I'm very careful about who I trust and very brutal with people who test me. Dante smiled. Are we negotiating business or testing boundaries? Because I'm happy to do either, but I'd prefer to know which game we're playing. Luca laughed, stepped back. I like you, still not sure about her, but I like you. He checked his watch. 4 o'clock, don't be late. And Kara, think about what I said. Everyone who matters is a weakness, even her. Especially her, his expression said. We left in silence, didn't speak until we were back in the car. He's going to try to separate us, Dante said. How? By making it too expensive to keep you, too dangerous, too complicated. He pulled out his phone, typed something. That's his strategy. Make the costs outweigh the benefits, force me to choose between the deal and you. What will you do? Choose you, loudly, publicly, so completely that it becomes too expensive for him to push. He looked up from his phone, which means the performance gets more intense, more intimate, more convincing. How much more? Enough that Marco and Alessandro can't ignore it. Enough that Luca realizes attacking you means war. He reached over, took my hand. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you signed up for. It's exactly what I signed up for. You told me it would be dangerous. Dangerous, yes, being used as a proxy in a family succession war. That's a different level. His thumb brushed over the ring on my finger. If you want out, now's the time. I can restructure the deal, send you home with everything I promised. No consequences. And your shipping routes. I'll find another way, I always do. He meant it, I could see it in his eyes. No, I said, we finished this. 3 days, remember. 1 down, 2 to go. He lifted my hand, pressed a kiss to my knuckles. The gesture was so natural I almost forgot it was performance. Thank you. Marco was charm itself, meeting us at a cafe, all warmth and easy smiles. He ordered us lunch, made conversation about art and travel, and all the safe topics people discuss when they're avoiding real business. You make my brother uncomfortable, he said finally, smiling at me. That's impressive. Luca isn't easily unsettled. I'm not trying to unsettle anyone. No, you're just existing beside Dante Cara, which is unsettling enough. Marco leaned back, studied us both. You're different than I expected, more genuine, less calculated. Should I be offended? Dante asked. You should be careful. Marco's smile faded. My brother will try to eliminate you as a problem. Alessandro will try to recruit you. I'm offering you a third option, real partnership. At what cost? Loyalty. Choose me when my father dies. Help me manage my brothers instead of replacing them. Build something sustainable instead of temporary. He looked at me again. And keep her safe. Because unlike Luca, I don't think she's a weakness. I think she's the first honest thing about you, and that makes you more dangerous, not less. The conversation continued, but my mind stayed on that phrase. The first honest thing about you. As if everything else, the business, the violence, the careful calculation, was a lie and only I was real. But I wasn't real. I was a performance. A 6-month contract. A ring that would come off when the timer expired. Wasn't I? Alessandro was waiting at our hotel when we returned. Not in the lobby. That would be too obvious. In the bar, charming the bartender, looking like he belonged anywhere wealthy and dangerous people gathered. Dante, Caterina. He stood, gestured to a private table. 1 drink, then I'll leave you to your evening. Dante's hand tightened on my back. Warning or comfort, still couldn't tell. We sat. Alessandro ordered something complicated, watched me over the rim of his glass. You love him, he said, not a question. That's private, Dante interrupted. What do you want, Alessandro? Same thing as my brothers, partnership, roots, the future. He set down his glass. But unlike them, I'm willing to admit the obvious. You've won. My father trusts you. Your proposal is better than anything we'd create fighting each other, and trying to undercut you would be stupid. So why the private meeting? Because I want to know what happens after, when the deal is done, when the roots are established, when you've gotten what you need from us. He leaned forward. Do you disappear? Do you become the power behind our family? Do you take everything and leave us with scraps? I take what we agreed to and maintain professional distance. No more, no less. Boring, predictable. Alessandro's smile was sharp, and probably a lie, but I'll accept it for now. He stood, dropped enough cash on the table to pay for a week of drinks. She really does love you, you know. I can see it. The question is whether you're smart enough to love her back or stupid enough to waste it. He left before either of us could respond. Dante sat very still for a long moment. Then, he's right. About what? You're very convincing. He stood, offered his hand. Let's go upstairs. We have 2 hours before the group session, and I need to brief you on what's coming. But when we reached the suite, he didn't brief me. Just poured a drink, stood by the window, and watched the city like he was memorizing it. Dante. Alessandro saw something. His voice was carefully controlled. Something in the way you look at me, the way you react, he thinks it's real. Isn't that the point? The point is for it to look real, not be real. He turned and his expression was unreadable. Is it real, Katerina? The question hung between us like smoke. I don't know, I admitted. Does it matter? Yes, because if it's real, then Luca was right. You're a weakness, a genuine vulnerability they can exploit. He moved closer. And if it's real, then when the 6 months end, this gets messy in ways neither of us can afford. So what do? We remember it's a performance. We maintain the boundaries. He stopped, close enough that I could see the conflict in his eyes. We stop before we forget we're pretending. Are you pretending? The silence was answer enough. Then his phone buzzed. The spell broke. He checked it and his expression shuddered back into professional distance. Car's here, time for the final performance. I followed him out, the ring heavy on my finger, and wondered if we'd already forgotten how to tell the difference. The meeting room was all dark wood and darker ambitions. The three brothers sat on one side, Dante and I on the other, with the old man at the head like a dying judge presiding over his own succession. For 3 hours they negotiated. Percentages, timelines, territory divisions. Dante was brilliant, giving ground where it didn't matter, holding firm where it did, orchestrating the entire conversation like a conductor. And then Luca made his move. One final concern, he said, his eyes on me. Kara, you claim to want partnership, but partnerships require equal vulnerability. Right now, we're exposing our entire operation to you. What are you exposing to us? Financial records, route details, operational capacity, everything we discussed. But not her, Luca leaned forward. You keep her separate, protected, above our reach, he smiled. That's not partnership, that's insurance. Katerina isn't part of the business. Then why is she here? Marco joined in, tag-teaming. Why bring her to every meeting, every negotiation? Either she's relevant, in which case she's part of the equation, or she's not, in which case her presence is manipulation. Alessandro stayed quiet, watching with those clever eyes. The old man coughed, drew everyone's attention. The boy has a point. You want trust, show vulnerability. Dante's hand found mine under the table, squeezed hard. What are you asking? Leave her with us, Luca said. Tonight, just dinner, just conversation. Let us get to know the woman you value enough to bring into our world. If she's as clever and loyal as you claim, we'll believe you. If she's decoration, we'll know. Every alarm in my body was screaming. No, Dante said flatly. Then no deal. Luca sat back, satisfaction in every line of his body. If you're not willing to show trust, why should we? The old man was watching Dante now, measuring. This was the test, the real one. Not whether Dante could negotiate or plan or strategize, but whether he'd sacrifice something that mattered for business. Dante stood, pulling me up with him. We're done. Dante, Marco started. We're done, Dante repeated. You want me to trade Katerina's safety for shipping routes. That tells me everything I need to know about how you value partnership. He moved toward the door, hand tight on mine. Enjoy your succession war. I'll find other routes. Wait, Alessandro's voice quiet but commanding. Sit down. Why? Because my brothers are idiots, my father is cruel, and you just proved you're exactly what you claim to be. Alessandro stood, faced his brothers. He called your bluff, Luca. You wanted to see if he'd sacrifice her. He wouldn't, test complete. That's exactly what this was, and it backfired. Alessandro turned to his father. He's legitimate, or as legitimate as any of us. I vote we proceed with his proposal. Marco nodded slowly, agreed. Luca looked furious but trapped. Fine, but I want additional guarantees. We can discuss those. Dante hadn't released my hand. Without using Katerina as a bargaining chip. The old man laughed, that wet, rasping sound. "You're more principled than I thought, Kara, stupid but principled." He gestured to the papers. "Sign, my lawyers will handle the details. And Kara." "Yes." "That woman is going to get you killed someday. Principals always do." But he was smiling. "Keep her anyway, makes you human. We need more humans in this business." The signing took another 2 hours. By the time we left, it was past midnight, and I was running on adrenaline and fear. In the car, Dante finally released my hand, stared out the window, didn't speak. "You walked away," I said, "from everything you came here for because of me." "Yes." "Why?" "Because you're not a bargaining chip. You're a person." He turned, and his expression was raw. "And because if I'd left you with them for even 5 minutes, I would have spent the rest of my life wondering what they said to you, what they offered you, whether I'd lost you in ways I couldn't fix." "You can't lose something you never had." "Can I?" His hand cupped my face, gentle and devastating. "Katerina, this stopped being a performance 3 days ago. Maybe earlier, I don't know when, but it stopped." "Dante." "I know, this is where we stop, where we remember the boundaries and the 6-month clock and all the very good reasons this can't be real." He leaned his forehead against mine. "But for right now, in this car, with no one watching, I'm going to admit that Alessandro was right. You're the first honest thing about me, and I don't know how to give that up." I should have pulled away, should have reminded him of contracts and agreements, and the fact that none of this was supposed to be real. Instead, I kissed him. It was brief, gentle, and the furthest thing from performance I'd ever experienced. When we broke apart, I saw my own confusion reflected in his eyes. "That was a mistake," I finished. "The best mistake I've made in years," he corrected. The car pulled up to the hotel. We sat in silence, not touching, the space between us charged with everything we couldn't say. "Tomorrow we go home," Dante said finally. "And when we do, we put the boundaries back in place. We remember this was temporary. We survive the next 3 months and part ways professionally." "What about tonight?" His smile was sad. "Tonight, we pretend a little longer that this could have been real." We went upstairs, to the suite with separate bedrooms and connected lives. And for the first time since this all began, I wasn't sure which was the performance, the distance we were supposed to maintain, or the connection we'd built despite it. The flight home was quiet. Dante worked on his laptop. I stared out the window, and neither of us acknowledged the ring I was still wearing or the kiss we'd shared, or the fact that everything had shifted in ways we couldn't undo. When we landed, the driver took us to my apartment building first. Dante didn't get out, just handed me a folder. "Your grandmother's care is set for life. Instructions are inside. The education fund we discussed is active. You can start whenever you want." He paused. "And Katerina, thank you. You were extraordinary." Past tense. "We're 3 months into a 6-month contract. No reason to end it early." He met my eyes. "Unless you want to." "Do you want me to?" "I want a lot of things. Most of them are bad ideas." He looked away. "Take a week, rest, decide if you want to continue. I'll understand if you don't." I climbed out of the car, watched it pull away, and stood on the sidewalk holding a folder full of my future and feeling like I'd just lost something I never actually had. The apartment felt empty now. All the beautiful clothes and expensive furniture and perfect staging. It was just stage dressing for a show that had ended. Or had it? I visited my grandmother the next day. She took one look at my face and knew. "You fell for him." "No, it was just, it's complicated." "Love always is." She patted the bed beside her. "Tell me." So I did, all of it. The contract, the performances, Milan, the brothers, the moment I'd stopped being able to tell what was real. She listened without interruption, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes sharp despite the medication. "Your grandfather," she said when I finished, "he was one of them. Not quite as powerful as your Dante, but close. Dangerous men who moved in shadows and built empires on questionable foundations. She smiled. I knew what he was when I married him, thought I could change him, make him better. Did you? No, but he changed himself. Not because I asked him to, but because loving me made him want to be someone I could respect. She squeezed my hand. That's the only way it works, Katia. They have to choose to change. You can't force it, can't bargain for it, can't perform it into existence. He doesn't love me. Doesn't he? She smiled. He walked away from a deal, protected you over profit, admitted vulnerability in a world where vulnerability is death. She tapped my chest. That's not performance, child. That's love. The question is what you're going to do about it. Nothing. The contract ends in 3 months. We both go back to our separate lives. Or you could renegotiate. I laughed bitter. You can't renegotiate a heart. No, but you can be honest about what you want. Let him be honest too, and see if the space between those truths is narrow enough to bridge. I stayed with her until visiting hours ended, then took the 3 buses home, and spent the night staring at my phone, trying to decide if honesty was worth the risk. At midnight he texted, "I miss you. That's not allowed, I know, but it's true." I stared at the message for 10 minutes, then typed, "I miss you too. What do we do about it?" His response came immediately. Something stupid, probably. "Can I see you tomorrow?" Yes. Not for business. I know. Katerina. Yes. I'm terrified. Good, me too. He came to my apartment the next afternoon, dressed casually for the first time since I'd known him. Jeans, a sweater, looking almost human. We sat on my temporary couch in my temporary life, and stared at each other like strangers who'd somehow become essential. "I don't know how to do this," he said finally. "The honest thing, the not calculated thing." Neither do I. We're supposed to have boundaries, clear lines, professional distance. We're supposed to, I agreed. So why are you still wearing the ring? I looked down, I'd forgotten I still had it on. I don't know. Katerina. He took my hand, the one with the ring, studied it like he was memorizing every detail. "I'm going to be honest in a way I've never been with anyone, and then you're going to have to decide what we do next." Okay. I hired you because I needed someone who could perform convincingly, someone smart and desperate and beautiful enough to be credible beside me. He looked up, met my eyes. But somewhere between that first night in Milan, it stopped being a performance. You stopped being an asset and became necessary. Necessary for what? For remembering I'm human, for having something worth protecting beyond power and territory, for making me want to be better than I am. His grip tightened. And that's dangerous, Katerina, for both of us, because in my world, anything you love can be used against you. Anyone who matters becomes a target. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'm falling for you, maybe already have fallen, and I don't know how to keep you safe while also keeping you close. He released my hand, stood, paced. The smart thing is to finish the contract professionally, pay you what I promised, set you up for life, and never see you again. And the stupid thing? The stupid thing is to keep you, officially, not as an employee or an assistant or a prop, as my, he stopped, searching for words, as mine, truly, knowing it makes you a target and accepting that risk anyway. You're asking me to sign up for permanent danger instead of 6 months of performance. I'm asking if what we built is real enough to risk everything for, because I think it is, for me at least, but I need to know if it is for you. I stood, crossed to where he'd stopped by the window, and took his hands. 3 months ago I was invisible, working 3 jobs, watching my grandmother die, existing in the margins of other people's lives. I made him look at me. You saw me. Not the performance, not the act. You saw me and decided I was worth investing in, worth protecting, worth risking a deal for. You were worth it. So answer me this. If I'm worth all that as an employee, what am I worth as something real? His smile was slow, devastating. Everything, you're worth everything. Then prove it, not with money or logistics or solving my problems. Prove it by letting me choose, every day, to stay or go, to be close or maintain distance, to love you or leave you. You're asking for autonomy in a relationship with someone who's built his entire life on control. I'm demanding it, because that's the only way this works. Not you protecting me from your world, but you trusting me to survive it beside you. He pulled me close, rested his forehead against mine. You're terrifying. Good, you need someone who terrifies you, keeps you honest. I'm still a criminal, Katerina. That doesn't change. The danger doesn't disappear because we're honest about what this is. I know, but I've been safe and invisible my entire life. Maybe I'm tired of hiding in margins. I pulled back enough to see his face. Maybe I want to be seen, by you, as whatever this becomes. Whatever it becomes, he repeated. That's the terrifying part, not knowing, not controlling the outcome. Welcome to real life. It's messy and uncontrolled and absolutely worth it. He kissed me then, properly this time. Not the brief, confused kiss in the car, but something deep and thorough and completely honest. When we broke apart, I was breathless and certain. The contract, I said. Void, torn up, whatever you want. He didn't release me. This doesn't get to be transactional anymore. So what is it? Terrifying, honest, real, he smiled. And completely yours to define every day, starting now. My grandmother had been right. You couldn't force change, but you could love someone enough to let them choose it, and be brave enough to choose it yourself. Okay, I said, let's be terrified together. Together, he agreed. And somewhere between performance and reality, contract and commitment, we'd found something that felt like truth. The weeks that followed were strange and normal and nothing like I'd expected. Dante pulled back from the dangerous edges of his business, shifting toward legitimate operations slowly enough not to draw attention. I started classes in international law, using the education fund he'd established but paying for extras myself. A small rebellion, a reminder I could stand on my own. We had dinner with my grandmother weekly. She adored him in the way only someone who'd loved a dangerous man could. Saw through his careful presentations to the person underneath and approved. You're good for him, she told me once when he'd stepped away to take a call. He was becoming his performance. You reminded him he was human first. He did the same for me. That's how it works. You save each other over and over in small ways that add up to everything. She died 3 months later, peacefully in her sleep, in the facility Dante had arranged. We buried her with full honors, and I wore the emerald necklace to the funeral because she'd loved it. At the reception, Luca appeared. I hadn't seen him since Milan, hadn't known Dante had invited him. My condolences, he said formally. She raised a remarkable woman. Thank you. He studied Dante across the room, then turned back to me. I was wrong about you, not a weakness, a strength. He handed me a card. If you ever need anything, from family to family. After he left, Dante found me. What did he say? That I'm family now, to them and to you. I leaned into him, exhausted. Is that true? Do you want it to be? I stopped, thought about everything that had changed, everything I'd chosen. I want to stop performing and start living, with you, however that looks. He pulled a small box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, different from the performance piece, simpler, more real. Just a platinum band with small diamonds circling it. Not an engagement ring. Not yet. Just, he struggled for words, just a promise that this is real, that you're choosing it daily and so am I, that we're building something honest from all the performances. I let him slide it on next to where the old ring had been. Kissed him in front of everyone, family and associates and strangers, and didn't care who saw. Together, I said. Together, he agreed. 2 years later, we married in a small ceremony. No family politics, no business negotiations. Just us and the people who mattered, making promises we'd already been keeping. The legitimate businesses grew. The dangerous edges faded. Dante became known as a tough negotiator but honest partner. I finished law school, started working in international humanitarian law. We bought a house with a garden, adopted a dog, lived a life that looked almost normal. But sometimes, late at night, he'd pull me close and murmur, "I miss when you were terrified of me." And I'd laugh and remind him, "I was never terrified of you. I was terrified of becoming someone I wasn't for you." And now I'm just me, complicated and sharp and absolutely yours, every single day. Every single day, he'd agree. And somewhere between a freezing night outside a club and a warm bed in a house we built together, I'd found exactly what my grandmother had promised. Not safety, not certainty, but the terrifying honesty of being seen and chosen and loved despite everything. From invisibility to clarity, from survival to living, from performance to truth. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It was infinitely better.